Hi, my name is Sedrick, and I am a member of Group 3. My group members include Shambalan, Jared, Kian, and myself included. Today, the four of us are going to be talking about the fine line between freedom of speech and hate speech on social media. So let's begin. What is freedom of speech? Freedom of speech is actually when someone freely voices out their opinions without having to worry about the contents of it. Now, when was freedom of speech established? It was first established in 1791 in the US. We picked the US because it is the most common result that we got, and we could not possibly find when freedom of speech was established to the whole world. So we just directly focused on what was the most common result, which is the US back in 1791. Because of this, living in the US were allowed to freely voice their opinions. Well, freedom of speech actually took a drastic turn from the 18th century to the current 21st century. People are using something called social media to post things or more accurately voice their opinions. Well, what is social media? As I mentioned that they do post things. Social media is actually a platform where you can post whatever you like, photos, videos, outfits, or buy from like consumers. There are plenty of things to cover. Well, free social media is actually a platform which gives people this freedom where they can send anything they want. Well, the problem with this is social media has given too much freedom, causing this freedom of speech to turn into hate speech. Users have actually abused this power and used the platform to talk about things that are unacceptable to say in the outside world. And people are seen, then the most common people that are seen doing this are netizens. Well, where is it most evidently seen in social media, is what you may ask. The most used platform where you can see this hate freedom of speech turn into hate speech is actually Twitter. Well, because of this rising issue of hate speech, Twitter has actually banned 60,000 over accounts just because they have been violating their policies and even talking about things that are unacceptable. This issue has to be tackled. Me and my group mates will be talking about Twitter strengthening their rules and regulations in order to stop this rising issue of hate speech. And the person who will be talking about this in the first point will be Shamalan.
Hello there, I'm Shamlin. Does the internet crosses the line between freedom of speech and hate speech? Let's find out. When it comes to a Twitter platform, the interaction between its users often creates controversies due to negative speeches, although not all considered hate speech. Negative speeches can be categorized into two: hate speech and criticism. Criticism can be defined as expression of disapproval of someone based on perceived faults or mistakes, whereas abusive or threatening speech that expresses prejudice against a particular group, especially based on race, religion, or sexual orientation, is the description of hate speech. Whereas abusive or threatening speech that expresses prejudice against a particular group, especially based on race, religion, or sexual orientation, is the description of hate speech. But what are the differences? Since every user is given too much of freedom of speech, many are misusing it to the extent of spreading hatred. Let's say, for example, you could criticize a user's judgment on Twitter on mainstream film directors using cliche plotlines like having a literal time-ticking bomb in most action movies' climax to create the tension of the film. But it can turn into hate speech if those criticisms are framed in a way designed to imply that criticisms is based, at least in part, on their identity rather than what they tweeted. For instance, in a span of 4 months from January to April of 2020, there were a total of 800,000 hateful tweets found on Twitter only on Asian hate. In fact, the hatred not only was spreading on Twitter but also influenced people outside, which evidently caused many physical cases of abuse of Asians living outside of Asia, especially Western countries. Furthermore, the animators of MAPPA Studios, who is responsible for the making of critically acclaimed anime television series Attack on Titan, the final season, received hateful tweets on Twitter from the fans of the TV show to even death threats. This is due to the fact that the animation was not on par with the previous seasons according to some toxic fans, even though the animators were given only 6 months to animate the whole show, wherein in average it takes around 1 to 2 years to animate an anime. This caused some of the animators to quit social media due to extreme backlash, which even the animator director mentioned that they were depressed due to this. Consequently, hate speeches could harm individuals, communities, and even societies. Research has found that the targets of hate speech can experience negative emotions, which can include low self-worth, fear of their own lives, anxiety, which could also lead up to self-harm or even suicide. In my humble opinion, as mentioned previously, it is alright to dislike or hate something on Twitter, though the dissatisfaction should be expressed in form of criticism and not hate speech.
Hello there, my name is Kian Soosay and I'll be explaining the second point of this essay. So the second point for this essay is when one arises opinions whereas others create controversies in this platform known as Twitter. Twitter is a prime platform whereby many of its users are given so much freedom of speech when it comes to expressing or publishing their own opinions in that particular platform. Sometimes these opinions might not matter, or even if they do, somehow the users will somehow spark an argument with their own opinions and they do not realize this, and they will start creating controversies and exchange of different opinions among each other and create so much issues without thinking whether their own opinions will cause them any negative consequences to themselves and to their own future. For instance, a great example of how these kind of issues arise is when the former president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, he have once tweeted back in 2020 whereby he has stated then, and he also mentioned that the COVID-19 virus is also known as the Chinese virus since the starting of the pandemic. His tweet has sparked a controversy whereby his statement is seen as a racist statement towards the Chinese people. Not only he's attacking the Chinese race, but he's also accusing China of causing this pandemic intentionally. This is a very good example of what happens when too much freedom of speech has been given in that particular platform. That's why celebrities and politicians, their opinions always matter. They must always be cautious of whatever they say or they tweet in Twitter. It is because they are the most influential people and has millions of followers. The next perfect example of bad tweets that has caused endless burden and endless amount of controversy on a particular person that has posted that tweet is a footballer named Bernardo Silva, a Portuguese footballer, whereby he has tweeted a tweet back in September 2019 posting a picture of his club football teammate Benjamin Mendy, who is a Negro, to a racist cartoon picture, and that has caused so much controversy. This particular tweet has not only caused the footballer his own career, but it has also sparked an opinion or view whereby it is seen as a racial slur towards the Negro people, the Negro ethnic of this world. And also, what Bernardo Silva has not realized is that not all opinions that everyone can accept or can be seen as the same. That has caused a lifetime burden for him for the rest of his life. The last example of bad opinions that has been posted in Twitter that could lead to a controversy between two peaceful nations and pose a threat of war between these two peaceful nations. For example, a tweet posted back in October 2020 by our former Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, which has stated that in his tweet that the terrorist innocent killing of 3 French people in a town called Nice in France is a right action taken by terrorists towards the French people due to the past and the history of the French towards the massacre of them causing the massacre towards the Muslim people back in the past. This particular tweet has caused public and international controversies among the French and the Malaysian community. Last but not least, yes, we are all given so much freedom of speech in this particular platform, but we must always consider and we must always be aware of whatever that we are about to type or whatever that we are about to tweet in that particular platform before causing so much public controversy that could lead to so much hate speech in this platform. That is all. Thank you.
Now, I will talk about the third point. The third point is the effect Twitter has on the future generation. Anyone can use Twitter, ranging from kids to adults. And when they post something, it is known on Twitter as a tweet. Even though this platform is for all ages, the most people that are seen on Twitter is actually kids/teenagers. Twitter is a platform most commonly known to users as the place where you can rant, RANT. This is because users have abused their freedom of speech on Twitter and have tweeted things that are unacceptable, like I mentioned in the introduction, but I did not specifically mention what. These examples are racial discrimination, gender inequality, cyberbullying, framing people, spreading fake rumors, and so much more. This freedom has actually caused an increase of hate speech on Twitter as where people begin to tweet things and other users have become influenced by it. This term is called cause and effect, where one person posts something, an example like how women should not work, just an example, and it begins to spread even more, and this will affect the users, and especially kids and teenagers, as they are the most seen users on Twitter, and they will get influenced as they are gullible and you can easily change their mindsets just from one single man or just one single person, which is an adult, that tweets about this thing. Let me give you an example. A man who is this man, let's call him John. John is new to Twitter, and he begins to tweet things about African Americans, which were harmless at the beginning. As he slowly tweets more about them, he slowly transitions from talking about nice things to him judging their appearance. And then it transitions even more, and it slowly develops to the point where he begins hating on African Americans. And from these tweets, users that have seen them and will get influenced, especially the users, because most of the users are kids and teenagers, and once they see this, they will get influenced by it. They will begin to do the same thing as what John is doing, and this will create a society where this society begins to hate on African Americans. And all of this hate and the forming of this society which hates African Americans began with this one man's action, began with John's action of tweeting things about African Americans which are totally unacceptable and has changed the mindset of kids, letting them grow up thinking that African Americans are not welcome. To sum it all up, tweets on Twitter can easily change the mindset of people, especially kids and teenagers, because they are gullible, and they will act accordingly just because an adult or someone else, or even someone who is their senior, talks about them, making them think that they are allowed to do this. Now, pass it on to my friend Jared, which you will conclude and talk about solutions.
Hello there, I'm Jared. Now I'll be talking about our final point, which is the solutions to tackle hate speech in Twitter. As we all know, Twitter is supposed to provide a safe space for every user to express their views and opinions. However, many users are taking advantage of Twitter to post derogatory content with the intention of suppressing others and reinforcing divisive ideas. As a result, this can spark hatred among other users of Twitter and can lead to much serious problems in the future, such as suicide and hate crimes. Therefore, certain measures can be taken in order to combat hate speech in Twitter. Firstly, laws against hate speech and verbal abuse should be applied in Twitter, just as they are in person. Twitter should not be a lawless space, and legal action must be taken on those who violate the terms of use of Twitter. Users who make this sort of abusive comments should not only be permanently suspended by Twitter, but they also should be prosecuted in court as well. Users who incite lawlessness should be given a warning first, and the consequences of not complying should be made very clearly to them. Moving on, Twitter should monitor potentially abusive tweets before they can be seen by members of the public. Offenders often set their tweets to public so that anyone can view and interact with their tweet. Before a tweet is made, Twitter should flag dehumanizing words aimed at a variety of groups, such as people of different race, political views, and sexual orientation. Once the tweet is made, Twitter should temporarily restrict anyone, including the followers of the offender, to view the tweet, while Twitter makes a ruling whether the tweet is acceptable or not. If the tweet is found to be unacceptable, Twitter should immediately remove the tweet and take serious action on the offender to ensure that this does not happen again. Furthermore, governments in every nation should impose heavy financial penalties on social media companies if they fail to reduce the amount of hate speech on their platforms. This does not just apply to Twitter, but other social media platforms as well. We can all take Germany as a perfect example in this matter. Back in the year 2017, Germany's new law called the Network Enforcement Act came into power in the country. This new law is aimed at regulating social media platforms to remove abusive comments and hate speech within 24 hours for straightforward cases and 7 days for complicated cases. Fines up to 50 million euros can be applied under law if social media platforms fail to comply. In a nutshell, hate speech in Twitter should not be taken lightly, and serious action must be taken on those who committed these offences. To sum everything up, freedom of speech is what protects a person's right to say anything they want, but that does not mean that the person can speak or publish irresponsibly. The majority of countries around the world have granted their citizens the freedom of speech, but unfortunately, rather than enjoying their freedom, many people are abusing it by inciting hate speech, which is a menace to social stability and democratic values. With Twitter being the most toxic social media platform, tackling hate speech is crucial to promote a safe and peaceful environment for everyone to express their views and opinions. Well, some users may argue that tackling hate speech means limiting and prohibiting their freedom of speech. But however, by addressing hate speech, we are actually keeping hate speech from escalating into something more dangerous, such as discrimination, violence, and abuse. Nevertheless, users of Twitter must acknowledge that exercising their freedom of speech comes with certain limitations and responsibilities. By enhancing resistance against this phenomenon, we can strengthen the bonds of society and build a better world for all. Thank you.